Notre Dame is back on the map, or are they? That's the thoughts we have in this game. After beating Clemson, now they take on the Navy midshipman. Marcus Freeman is now back on the spotlight, if you will, and we'll see if he can take care of Navy. Welcome to Slasher U with the recap and preview for Navy versus Notre Dame. This is going to be, I think, a sneaky game. This is a noon game on ABC, and Notre Dame has to make sure they don't have the meltdown, as some people think that could happen. We've seen it happen so far at the beginning of the season against Marshall, against Stanford. They beat Clemson, they beat Syracuse. They're on a good run. Do they continue the good ways, or do they find a way to step back? This is what this preview is all about. I'm Christian Rao here with Steve Feck. Welcome to Slasher U.
I was trying to find a way to gracefully apologize to Notre Dame fans and Notre Dame players. So I'm going to eat my words here. They played an almost perfect game against Clemson. Thankfully, the line I wanted to use didn't get into our preview clip of that game because it would be even more painful for me to do that. And it's funny because both teams, lost their first two games of the year. But at this stage of things, the disparity between the two rosters is much larger. It's been a tough year for Navy. They run the ball more than 60 times a game. And that's mind-blowing as a stat that they would do 60 runs per game. And they're great at shutting down the run. So that will be an interesting dynamic because Notre Dame likes to run the football, and Navy is holding opponents to 88 yards. They're not matching up against a Notre Dame rushing attack. They're lesser opponents or Service Academy opponents, the runs. So I want to believe that this is going to be a close game. I do. And certainly because Navy is up around 36 minutes in average time of possession. So that certainly means that the Notre Dame offense is not going to be on the field as much. But I just don't, even if Notre Dame has a hard time running the ball, I'd imagine they'll get over 100 yards. They're averaging well over 200. They'll get over 100 yards rushing, but I still think they're going to have enough to pull away at some stage of the game. Navy's going to do everything they can to not allow that to happen. And when you're going up against an option offense, and Navy probably takes it to an even higher level than even, let's say, Air Force or Army does. Big runs, they could break off a big run here and there and kind of make it a little bit, nerve-wracking, for Fighting Irish fans. But I just don't see a pathway for Navy to be able to to stop Notre Dame to the point where Notre Dame doesn't win the football game. Now, there's going to be some pretty nasty weather the day before. The game's being played in Baltimore, so the field conditions could come into play. But again, both teams are going to want to run the ball.
Yeah.
Even if Navy was thinking about a passing game, they lost their starting quarterback 2 weeks ago to a season-ending knee injury, so he's not there, and they're still trying to mix and match at the quarterback position. But I don't think they've attempted more than 3 passes since they lost their quarterback. So we both have a soft spot in our heart for the service academies. We really do. But Notre Dame, everything is firing on all cylinders now. So Notre Dame has done a nice job at salvaging their season. Let me put some more eating of my words here. And I think they're positioning themselves now the best they can for the best possible bowl bed they can get. And because they're Notre Dame and because there's fans everywhere and because their fans travel, they're going to have an upper hand over teams that might even have the better records. Earlier this evening, we were talking about UTSA. I would much rather see UTSA in a New Year's Six Bowl, but Notre Dame and the fan base and the ratings are going to maybe dictate otherwise.
Yeah, well, definitely. There's definitely some sort of impact when it comes to bowl predictions for that. I think the 3 losses are going to hurt them for an NY6 bowl, regardless. Though, I think the only way Navy even stays in this game is if Notre Dame overlooks them, and that's the only thing that comes into play in my mind because Notre Dame's won 6 of their last 7. That one in that 7 is that Stanford game after losing their first 2. Notre Dame is on a roll. They're on a rise. They're finally starting to get their stride. Will they overlook them and then look forward to other games in this one? I don't think that happens, but I think that's the only way that we see the midshipmen stay in this one. And weather, I think, is something that you can really put into consideration as well because Navy knows how to run the football. I'm not saying Notre Dame doesn't, but Navy knows how. I like this quote here from head coach Marcus Freeman. He says, speaking of the Clemson win, moving on to Navy because that's a game that everybody's talking about, knocking Clemson out of the college football playoffs potentially for the whole rest of the season. He says we have to turn the page and get ready for a Navy opponent that's tough, and that is a unique style of offense and will present some issues if you're not ready to go. That is him saying we can't overlook this Navy squad. So I'm sure that he's speaking to his Notre Dame team saying, hey, look, don't sleep on Navy. Even though that they've won the last 4 against Navy, even though they're leading the entire series in the history of the Notre Dame Navy, 80-13-1. That's gone on uninterrupted from 1927 to 2019. Only COVID stopped this series. It's a series that's very historic. It's a very good game to watch. We're going to see it at noon Eastern time on ABC, and this is a very fun one to watch. I'm looking forward to this one, Steve.
Oh, I am too. And it's funny. I mean, I saw quotes about how Navy could have an advantage because they're used to playing Notre Dame. But on the flip side, Notre Dame is used to coming up against the Navy's, style of option offense. And they have some interesting schemes on defense as well. So these teams are familiar with each other. Again, it hasn't been maybe as high profile the last couple of years, since the COVID situation, but certainly fans of both sides are used to playing each other. So I don't know that there's it'd be different if it was, let's say, Indiana that was playing Navy and they really have never played Navy before. They may have some troubles trying to stop that option offense. Notre Dame has seen it. They play programs that run options, not just Navy. Navy does it perhaps better than anybody other than Air Force. But I'm going to be tuned in. I mean, it's an early game. I'm going to be tuned in. It's tradition. It's Navy is a tradition. Notre Dame, Lord knows that Notre Dame is just oozing with tradition. But I mean, I'm going to be tuned into this game. I might go over and watch some FCS games, at 1:00 or whatever. But I'm certainly at noon, I'm going to be locked into this one.
Yeah, we'll see if the Rip Miller Trophy moves at all to the Service Academy, over to Navy, over to the midshipmen. I don't see it happening. I don't even see if it gets itself out of the case. I think Notre Dame will take care of this one just fine.